Okay, we're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the January 21st meeting of the Project and Infrastructure Committee meeting of the Downtown Development Authority Board. Chad, could you call the roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I could remind the committee members, please state your name, that you're attending remotely, and from what city or county and state that you're attending from, please. Peter Dewan.
Peter Dewan, I'm attending virtually from Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Jim Kroom.
Hi, attending virtually from Leland, Michigan.
Michael Kruger.
Hey, yes, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan.
George Lahanas.
Here, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Greg Ballline.
Here, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Jill Foposh.
Jill Felposh, attending virtually from St. John's, Michigan, Clinton County.
And Mayor Stevens.
Here, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
That completes a roll call.
Great, thank you. We have the agenda as presented by staff. Is there approval of the agenda? I'll offer a motion to approve the agenda. And
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
And
Second.
seconded by Mayor Stevens. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we will move on to communications from the audience. Is there anyone wishing to address the Project and Infrastructure Committee?
Currently, we have two callers in the queue, Chair. Caller with the last three digits of 903. I'm going to unmute you and you'll be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. If you do not wish to speak, or if you're waiting for another agenda item to speak, you may just say pass. Caller 903, you've been unmuted. Caller 903, would you like to speak? Okay, moving on. We have caller 963. Caller with the last three digits of 963. I'm going to unmute you and you'll be given 5 minutes to speak.
Hello? Hello?
Oh. It seems that was
This
caller
is-
163.
I think we have both trying to talk at this.
This
Caller
is
903,
Victor.
go ahead.
Is this caller 903?
Yes, it is, if I may speak.
Your 5 minutes begins now. Thank you.
This is Victor Loomis. I have been asked by an increasing number of our fellow citizens to begin monitoring the transactions of the Downtown Development Authority. That's a body of the city that I chaired for 8 years and served on for 9 years. The concern in the city is that our Downtown Development Authority, and I subscribe to this, is leveraging the financials of the city of East Lansing. I'm going to listen in, again, at the request of an increasing number of our fellow citizens, including, quite frankly, some City of East Lansing staff members. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. We move on to the next caller.
Okay, thank you. Caller 963, you'll be unmuted and given 5 minutes to speak.
Hi, this is Alice Dreger. I'm glad to hear that Vic is on the line listening. Knowing that you all are paying Miller Canfield $400 an hour, I feel that I should be extra brief. But the Evergreen Properties agreement that you have before you, what are you thinking? I mean, it's almost like there's amnesia in this system. I just don't understand it. There's no question that River Caddis bringing forward an office building in this location would be terrific. But look at the terms of the deal that they're offering. Where is the evidence that they have any leased tenants? There's no evidence. They're asking for 1 year and 3 months of an exclusive agreement, 450 days beyond what we've already given them. They're also not planning to actually pay what is owed on the property. They want us to take a very large subordinate lien, a subordinate lien that would be subordinate to traditional financing, which suggests it would be potentially worthless, at least in part. How does this solve anything? In addition to that, the way that this is structured leaves a complete mystery as to what they're going to ask in brownfield. But you can bet they're going to ask for a maximum of brownfield. They'll probably also ask us to build the parking, as far as I can tell. We're basically being asked to do everything in this agreement. And granted, you have in this agreement again that you're going to have them give you money while it drags out. But recall the last time, you simply gave all the money back to Royal Oaxacas. Again, it feels as if there is simply amnesia here. It surely is time at this point to pause and to convene something like the financial health team, a blue ribbon panel, in order to understand what to do with these properties. This is a huge problem. And the city of East Lansing's name is on the line for it, and you're not getting anywhere. And this agreement is disturbing beyond belief. I mean, and the fact that you've hired Miller Canfield now, who did not exactly represent our best interests in the Center City deal recently, is being hired at $400 an hour to handle this is astonishing. Give Foster Swift $300 an hour to represent us on this until you need another lawyer, and then hire somebody else. But in the meantime, convene something like a blue ribbon panel that would be people with actual real experience in commercial redevelopment. People like Colin Cronin, people like Chris Oakley, people like John McGraw, who should be on this discussion, people like Vic Loomis, people like Chris Root, who has a master's in economics and knows more about brownfield in East Lansing, I would bet, than almost anybody. Bring together a group to actually discuss what's feasible on this. Don't sign up for this again. I'm just reading this. I have to tell you, I'm just astonished, absolutely astonished. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Are there any other callers?
No, Chair, that's it.
Okay. We have no written communications to my knowledge. Let's move on to item 4 on our agenda, which is the River Caddis development. Adam, are you going to?
Yes. Yes, Chair. Yeah, so now we'll be discussing the draft purchase and sales agreement for the Evergreen properties. That can be found in your packet. As you know, the current MOU expires on January 29th, which was extended in October to provide additional time to negotiate and structure the PSA. The key items and takeaways from the draft PSA include several suggested changes through work with staff and legal counsel. So I'm just going to highlight some of those key items. We're looking at $5.4 million purchase price. And, we're floating around the concept at closing $1.2 million in cash directly to the DDA, which would provide approximately 3 years of debt service payments. The remaining balance would be held via a note by the DDA and secured by a mortgage on the property. This would be to align with the actual payments of principal plus interest on DDA debt that's related to this property, and would likely need to be a subordinate lien position to traditional financing for the project. There'd be a $100,000 deposit, additional payments to help with DDA with carrying costs to keep moving forward in good faith. So this would include $5,000 monthly payments to the DDA to help with those carrying costs, which is approximately 50% of our current debt service. $50,000 would be required for each time, each of the 3 90-day extensions that they requested. However, that doesn't automatically assume that those extensions would be approved, obviously. There's still broad discretion for the developer to back out, but it ultimately leaves the DDA in a better position. You know, we've tied the PSA to the development project as anticipated. We have the PSA serving as a pre-development agreement, basically, with conditions such as, you know, the developer must go through the city development review process, site plan approvals, must execute a development agreement, have a brownfield plan as, you know, if needed, and any other approvals that are needed that would be needed prior to closing. They'd also be required to pay prevailing wages for construction of the building and property improvements. Of course, the $25,000 for DDA communications, outreach, and marketing. But they also would have to provide evidence of financing and work with the city to create parking opportunities for tenants and the general public in the area. They would have to execute a lease with an anchor tenant. And there's, you know, they would reserve the right to demolish the buildings and any other structures on the property. In closing, they would have to close within 10 days at the end of the contingency period. And basically, we've removed out-of-pocket damages, limited remedies to specific performance based on these conditions. So with that, you know, we have Miller Canfield on the call here to help answer any questions that you may have, and we can go from there.
Thank you, Adam. Are there questions of staff or of our legal counsel from board members?
When would this be coming back to the full DDA?
28th of January.
Okay.
At our full DDA meeting.
Chair, are you looking for comments now or just for questions?
Sorry, I didn't hear you, George.
Are you looking for comments from the board?
Yeah, we're looking for comments. I just want to put it on the radar. You know, of course, the MOU does expire on the 29th. And, you know, we were hoping to have a PSA executed by then, but in all likelihood, you know, we're still going to have to work to draft that PSA based on, you know, the DDA's buy-in and input. And so we may be looking at going into February at the earliest before we execute any kind of PSA, should that occur.
Is the developer on the call here this morning or this afternoon?
He is not. He was not able to make it. He had a prior engagement, a personal engagement that he could not get out of.
Has staff discussed this plan with the developer or this, I guess, counter proposal to their original proposal? Does it seem like it's something that's actually feasible on their behalf?
Yeah, we still need to collect input from the developer as well. Absolutely.
So this has not been presented to the developer at all. Yeah.
I'm not certain on that. Tom, are you on the call? Yeah.
Yes. So this is the first review from staff and the new real estate council. And these are suggestions that we're making for your consideration. I think the thought is to bring this to the board on the 28th and to you today to get your input, make sure we're in the ballpark and on the right track in terms of our ultimately a counter proposal from the DDA. We have shared this with the developer. They have not yet offered any comments on these changes. So ultimately, I think we'd be looking to bring it to the full board next week, get input, and incorporate that into a version that we would send then officially to the developer for their review and comment.
Thanks, Tom. Go ahead, George.
So I'll just start off. I think it's a good start and a good position to start with the developer. Obviously, having them participate in the carrying costs of the property over the coming months while they're working towards a project, hopefully, and showing some commitment to it, I think is a good move from our part. You know, at this point, I think all of us would say that it's not necessarily a situation we want to be in. This parcel and the purchase price all came basically into our laps from decisions made a decade ago or beyond. So at this point, we have to come up with the best possible solution. We've gone through a number of different iterations of RFP processes and all of that. Now we have a developer who's at least looking in the right direction, spending money and working in the right direction towards office and something different, something exciting, and something we want to see. All of us know that our bailout is to go onto the market and build the biggest student housing project we could build, and that's the easy money, and that's the way to get out of this financially. But I think nobody here thinks that that is a great solution for the long term for our downtown. So I do think this is the direction to go. I think continuing with the developer who has spent a lot of time and resources and made a tremendous effort to do something different, to do legitimate office in the downtown, with us hopefully bringing MSU-FCU downtown. We see a possible turning point here. If we can get more office here with TechSmith coming in just over on the other side of campus, I think we see some great opportunities to make the downtown in this city more resilient and not just relying 100% on MSU students as the financial resources of this community and especially the downtown. I think this is the way to go. And I'm happy to have Caddis working with us. Obviously, I'd love to not have had a pandemic and had to have them produce a tenant for us already and have this all moving forward. But we're in the middle of a global pandemic and we have to hit pause for a year. And anyone who can't see that this is a situation that we're in right now, I think isn't understanding what's happening around us in the world with office, with anything else. So I think this is a good situation as we're going to get at this point. And I'm willing to move forward with Caddis if they're willing to work with us on carrying costs and commitment.
Thanks, George. Any additional comments or questions? Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Peter. A couple of background questions. We've apparently, someone on behalf of the city has apparently been in discussions with River Caddis. So first question is, who on behalf of the city has developed this counter proposal in terms of the actual cash terms? I'm not talking about the markup now, just talking about the terms.
Yeah, so it was a combination of city staff and Miller Canfield that came with these suggested edits to PSA.
But as far as the terms, for instance, term number one, they would not be paying full cash up front for the property. Was that negotiated at this point, or is this simply our counter proposal without negotiation directly with the developer?
My understanding is it was not negotiated. Again, this is a draft prepared by city staff in collaboration with Miller Canfield.
I think that's in response to their proposal, right? I mean, this stuff is taking their proposal and making changes to it to make it more acceptable to the city.
Yeah, if you recall, they submitted their proposal, their PSA back in July, or maybe it was, maybe I'm getting my dates mixed up, but they submitted their draft, and this is our response to that draft, our suggested edits, and now we're here at the table to solicit input. And I believe Tom has.
I'm sorry, Adam. I see Tom is joining the call. Tom, do you want to add some additional comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that Mr. Lahanis is correct. The idea for the split between cash and future payments was really submitted by the developer as their intended way to handle the payment, and this is our counter proposal within that scenario. It's certainly, you know, up for your consideration. I think the developer has made it clear that, you know, they do not intend to make a full cash offer, and they'd like to work out arrangements, and that was their stated intention. And so within that, staff thought that, you know, some reasonable amount of cash to make us whole on the payments for 3 years approximately, and then a payment structure that would essentially make us whole on what is owed might be reasonable. And so that's for your consideration today.
You know, I think, thank you for that, Tom. I would like to hear maybe a little bit of input from the developer. I recognize this has been a long road that they have been on. There's clearly a lot of obstacles on that road with regard to the pandemic. The whole conversation about, you know, trying to generate interest in a project. I know they've worked very hard at trying to come up with tenants. It would be helpful, I think, for the full board to have a little bit of better background of where we're at the moment, what they envision with regard to moving forward on the project before we start drilling down into the PSA and you know, just kind of a check-in as far as what we anticipate the expectation is moving forward. Those are just some of my initial thoughts. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment? Mayor Stevens?
Yeah, so given what Adam had said regarding timeline, so we don't run into another situation where I think the DDA and the city council, while they're, you know, working together on something, are not necessarily on the same page. I think it might be good to bring this to the city council just as something to update and to gain input from them, as you know, this will be conditional on city council approval. So of the project, understanding that the time restraints in there, I do think this is something that that's important that they be brought into the loop on in a full fashion and, you know, full understanding. So that would be my initial input right now, at least.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. So what do you envision with regard to the DDA and the council's evaluation of this project? Are you talking about having a joint meeting or?
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm not really able to hear you. I'm getting a little bit of feedback from somebody, and
I apologize. I don't know what's going on with my audio today, and I'll try and correct that in the future. I guess the question is, what is your idea of how the DDA and the council will work on this proposed development outside of the normal process? Are you suggesting?
No, I mean, yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. Not that the normal process won't carry out and that, you know, a site plan won't be approved by the council, but just because, you know, if it were to move forward on the DDA's end, this would be something that we'd be involved in for around, you know, upwards of a year. I do think it's important that the council is in the loop, right? I think that I can provide updates to the council. George can provide updates to the council offline, but I think that in a formal meeting with staff there, you know, experts that can, you know, answer questions that are a little bit more complex than maybe I can. It's important. You know, they're the elected body of the city, and you know, ultimately they're going to have the proposal in front of them, and so the financials beforehand are still just as important in that aspect. So my idea is not necessarily to have the council, you know, have a vote. You know, obviously, being a member of the council on the DDA is that vote, but having them in the loop is never a bad thing, especially as we're going forward with, you know, a difficult year, difficult process, and a few setbacks that were unforeseen.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. Jim Crew.
Hi, yeah, I agree with the mayor. The council needs to be in the loop on this. My impression is that we're not in a position to move forward looking at these financial terms. We have a developer that's had a significant amount of time to get its act together. I understand these things take time. I understand COVID and the economy, and those are valid. Those are actually valid comments. We are probably going to be faced with a decision of a much, if any, a much shorter extension to allow some more internal discussion, if I can put it that way, on what might be a sound set of positions to take in terms of the financial aspects that we're talking about here and in terms of the details of the projects. I have no line of sight into what the project is going to look like, whether there are potential lessees lined up, even how solid this developer is. And it doesn't seem to me to be that solid if they're unable to fund a cash purchase of the property. And I may be mistaken in my recollection, but I thought this same developer had proposed cash payment for the property in one of the prior iterations that we've gone through. So I'm not, I don't think we'll be in a position at this point. I'm personally not going to be in favor of approving this at the DDA meeting. But to me, this needs to be worked on from our side of the table. And I'm surprised that the developer's not here again. If this is an important project, I assume they would be here at this meeting. Maybe we're looking at a much shorter extension to allow us to do more work on our side and to hear from the developer. But I'm not going to be in a position or willing to move this forward at the next DDA meeting.
Thanks, Jim. Any additional questions or comments? Jill, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, the only thing I would like a little more information on is maybe the risks of having a promissory note, or a note. I feel like there's more chance for non-payment in the future, and what's our ability to collect, or what's the risks, I guess, is what I would like to understand a little bit better. Having a full cash offer is much nicer than having this note sitting out there. So that's probably my biggest concern about the deal as it sits at this moment.
Thanks, Jill. Any additional comments? So, and we do have our legal counsel on the line here. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, Chair, that Miller Canfield is on the line and can answer some of these questions and provide more insight. I know I see Reshma.
Yeah,
Steve,
this is Steve Palms from Miller Canfield. Reshma and I are on the phone with you. A couple items to note. Reshma and I did call the lawyer who's representing the buyer about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago. And to be honest with you, that lawyer hadn't heard about this transaction in a number of months. So that actually he was happy to hear from us that maybe there was some progress moving forward on it. But at that point, he wasn't aware, frankly, of where his client stood in terms of the status of their due diligence and their review. But he was, clearly interested in talking, and again, happy that there was interest there. So just that note. So that would indicate, obviously, that his client isn't, banging down his door to get this done. The second thing I would say is that with respect to the document that you're looking at, the original offer did come in from the buyer, and working with Tom and Adam, who provided some comments, we provided some comments. The revision is one that we prepared that we've not yet sent back to the buyer's counsel. But it's significantly better than the offer that they made. But as everyone has pointed out, there is a cash element to the purchase price plus a debt element. Again, we were trying to improve the structure there so that the debt element they had was just a promissory note. We've required a mortgage to secure the balance of that payment and some kind of amortization plus a pledge of whatever incentives might be available, such as brownfield money they may qualify for, would probably qualify for, so that as those funds come in, those would come to us to pay the remaining debt that we would have. But again, it would be secured by a mortgage that candidly we may need to subordinate to a lender they get to finance their overall construction. But at least it puts us in a better spot than just having a promissory note hanging out there. We were requiring some deposit funds, $100,000 initial deposit, and then if they wanted to extend, and they asked for several extension periods, we were going to get additional funds from them, which again would show that they've got a commitment to the project if they're adding money to the deposits. And again, as a condition for closing, we were looking for assurances that all the funds, both equity and incentive money, as well as debt funds, would be available to make sure that the project was going to work before we actually signed on with them. So again, we were trying to structure this in a way that we had assurances that this project was real before we signed up with them, and particularly before we signed up, as you have noted, not getting cash in full, which again, my understanding based on conversations with Adam and Tom is that an all cash offer at this number is not in the cards because in candor, the market value of this property may not justify that. So we're trying to get our investment back, but the way to do that effectively is to basically bifurcate the payments so that the initial payment may be more reflective of what a market price might be, and then the balance would assist us in paying us back for what we have invested. But that's in effect a payment over time. That if you're just to go to the open market and seek those funds for this kind of project, we probably wouldn't get it. So that's it. Tom, Adam, is there anything else that comes to mind for you in terms of our discussions with respect to modifications to this offer? Oh, I should add one more thing, that we have not yet sent this revised version of the purchase agreement back to the buyer, so that at this point we don't know if the changes that we've made would be acceptable to them. Again, we were waiting for this meeting and this discussion before proceeding with that. So again, we don't even know whether the additional modifications that we're looking for would be acceptable to the buyer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I see, Jim, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Peter. Do we know what entity would ultimately be our counterparty on this agreement? Would it likely be a single purpose entity that's not well funded? I don't see any guarantees that are proposed on the note.
It would absolutely be a single purpose LLC. Most real estate developments, done by a developer, if a corporation is building a building, it would be different, but real estate developers form SPEs, they call them single purpose entities, that would acquire and acquire the property and build the building. In terms of loan arrangements, the lender will often ask for a personal guarantee. We would love to get a personal guarantee. I guess at this point we're not sure that again, in light of the valuation, we haven't added that into our modification of the agreement, but we certainly could do that. What we had added was a mortgage so that we would have a secure position, but not a personal liability. But again, we haven't sent this back, and if we, that certainly is a better situation to be able to go after somebody personally, gets them to pay attention if they've got personal liability. So that again, up to you as to what kind of a response that we should make to them. And again, we can certainly ask for personal liability.
And then what would be the case if I heard someone say this covers, the initial downstroke would cover the 3 years of principal and interest on the underlying debt. So if there were a default or a failure of the project, the DDA would be able to pay the underlying debt service for 3 years, and then it would come out of, we'd be back in a position where the DDA is funding this out of its own pocket. Is that the way to look at this currently?
Yes, the down payment would help us through the first 3 years of debt service, but if there's a default and they fail to pay on the mortgage, then the DDA would be in a position where it would have to fund the remainder of its debt from other sources, except that if we do get a mortgage on this piece of property, we could foreclose on that and take this property back. But again, that may be complicated if we have subordinated our mortgage to a mortgage that they give to a third-party lender, so that we may not be able to obtain title back to this property again in connection with a default, because we'd have a subordinate position. So we're basically counting on that project moving forward and working so that it produces the cash to pay that debt. It gives us a position, but if the project fails, it's likely that our second mortgage would not get paid. So again, we're counting on the success of the project, and in effect, what we're counting on is that the value of the property we're in effect getting in the down payment, and the additional funds that we're seeking because we want to be able to pay our entire debt are in some respects, you'd have to consider it like equity in it only happens if this developer is successful in its development. Not the best position to be in. On the other hand, if we were just to go on the open market and sell this, it's likely that all you get for it is the amount that we're seeking in the down payment.
Yeah, I can understand that position, but at this point, it seems like the structure is that we're effectively partners with the developer, except we don't get any upside. We get our cash value out of it, if that is arguably the value, and I have no idea whether that's a proper fair market value at this point, may or may not be. But we become partners with the developer because we're not paid out, and yet we don't get any of the upside. We're not equity partners. It seems to me like they should fund this entire amount, and if they can't propose a project that would allow them to purchase this for cash, we'd ought to think twice about it. And I'm also concerned again about things like do we have any performance bonds proposed here? What assurance would we have that this project is ultimately completed?
I guess a couple of thoughts. One is that I guess the way that we were looking at the mortgage would be that frankly that entire mortgage, if we just get paid that would be a huge upside for us, because normally a developer would come in and only pay for property what it's worth, and so that assuming that my understanding with respect to the valuation is accurate, every bit of that additional amount that would be secured by that debt is more than the property is worth. So that the way the developer would look at that, and again, I'm representing you, not them, but just to let you know that they would look at that as a complete upside. That isn't a cost that they should pay. They should only have to pay what the property is worth. So they're looking at it in a different way than you are, which is that we should be able to get that entire sum back. But again, if you're just on the open market, sell it, you're not going to get that. But you're right. There's no kicker over and above that in terms of an additional value over and above that amount. Again, we could ask for that. We could ask for guarantees, personal guarantees. We could ask for payment bonds. I prefer actually a guarantee to a payment bond because generally speaking, if somebody can get a payment bond, they've got the wherewithal that a guarantee may be satisfactory so that the cost of the bond may not be worth it. But certainly we could ask for personal liability. We could ask for a kicker on that. Again, it all depends on whether, from the developer's perspective, those economics work for them to make this a viable project. And if they do, I suspect we could negotiate that. If they don't if they cause this not to be viable, then we're going to be in a position where they will not move forward and undertake the project.
Understood. So there's sort of two aspects. One is, the appropriate amount for the price for the property and the structure there. And I understand you've laid out a couple of views on that, and that's appreciated. The second aspect is we have an interest in getting paid, obviously, on the property, but we also have an interest on behalf of the city and the DDA that the project be completed. We don't know what this project is, so I'm talking hypothetically, but whatever this hypothetical project is, that it be completed and not be sitting there empty in terms of insolvency. So help me or us understand in a deal like this, it would be funded through either equity that is contributed by either related or unrelated parties to the single purpose LLC, or it would be funded by debt. And would either, tell me if that's the case or if there are other methods, and then would either the equity contributors or the debt sponsors, would they require a completion bond? What assurance would the folks that are putting up the money on the developer's side have of completing the project and either earning profits or having their debt paid?
Well, you're right in terms of the sources of the funds. The developer will look at this as, they're going to put in a certain amount as equity, and whether that comes out of their own pockets or where they go out and get additional partners who are willing to put cash in to invest in the project. So there's an equity portion of it. There's a debt portion. They will go to a construction lender or a real estate lender and seek financing. And if they can get long-term, maybe 80% of the cost funded by a lender, you're never going to get 100%, as you know. So they'll need an equity component. They'll have a debt component. Another source of funds we expect is that since there's contamination on this site, we anticipate that some of the cleanup costs in any event and some of the original costs may be reimbursed through a brownfield plan, and so that the taxes imposed down the road once the project is complete would come back to repay pursuant to a brownfield development plan. So we see that as another source of funds for the developer. But you're correct that investors, whether there's the developer reaching into his own pocket or getting third parties, they are going to be interested in a return on their investment. They're going to be interested in knowing that the developer is going to be able to complete the project. Their lenders certainly will be interested in the ability to complete. We are also obviously interested in their ability to complete it, so that one of the things that we've added to the purchase document is a condition for closing, where they show us where all the money's coming from to pay for this project, whether it's equity, debt, the incentives, perhaps hopefully from the MEDC, you know, through a brownfield plan, so that we want to know that so that there is funding to pay all the costs of the project. We also want to know that the site plan has been approved by the city, so that it's a project that has been approved in terms of its components and the compliance with zoning and the planning process, so that and we have proposed a provision that if they don't start and complete the project within a stipulated period of time, that we can buy it back from them for the price that they paid to us. So that if nothing happens here, we can just give them whatever money that they paid us for it. We can give that back to them and take title back, so that we make sure that something happens here. We're not the typical seller where all you care about is getting paid, and then whatever happens, happens. So we've added a provision again to the purchase agreement that would allow us to get it back if they don't proceed. We're obviously much more interested in having them proceed and getting as much security as we can for that, and as much assurance as we can that they've taken all the steps that they need to take to assure a viable project. But then, notwithstanding all of that, sometimes things don't happen. But one of the things that you know, along the lines of making it work, that we're particularly interested in is knowing that they have a lease of a significant part of this building for, you know, from a viable tenant that will lease space for office purposes. So that you know, one of the assurances is that they've got a signed lease with a tenant interested in this space. We don't believe that is actually in place at the moment. But that's another element where we will all be more comfortable if they have a tenant lined up that says, when you finish the space, I will start paying you rent. I'll move in and start paying you rent for it. So that's another element of this project that needs to proceed and to be completed. I think before they're gonna buy the land from us in the first place. They're not doing this, in other words, on a speculative basis where they're just going to buy it and hope to find a tenant.
Right. And
I realize I'm rattling on. I hope this is helpful.
No, that was useful. I think the provision or the concept that you've woven in about getting the property back if they're unable to complete, in other words, the DDA getting the property back, is interesting. It's somewhat counterintuitive, but as you've explained it, the DDA and the city want to be in a position to make sure that in that unfortunate event that we can control the property again, it sounds like. So I'll have to think about that. And then the other aspect of that is whether we have to pay them the money back to get our own property back. And that's just a financial term.
Sure. Actually, we would have a mortgage. We will have a mortgage to secure the balance, but again, the mortgage is only going to be worth what the land is worth. So if it's a failed project, that there may not be enough money to cover that. That's where your suggestion about a guarantee would be wonderful if we could get that. But the buyback is not an obligation. It would be an option on our part, so that if it didn't look like, you know, giving them back the money that they paid us is worth it, we wouldn't have to do it. It's just an option on our part to make sure that the land doesn't sit there forever undeveloped, and we'd prefer to make something happen with somebody else if these guys can't make it work. So that is an option we would have on our part, not an obligation.
It seems to put us in a worse position, in my opinion.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to be right. We want options that are available if we want to exercise them. So you're absolutely right. We're not trying to dig a bigger hole for ourselves.
And of course, that option would only work before a debt layer was added on, because we'd be subordinate under this structure. We'd be subordinate to the debt.
Yes. That if they have a third-party lender and the you know, the lender forecloses, chances are we would, well, our initial mortgage would be wiped out, and the option to buy, chances are that we would not be able to negotiate an option to buy that supersedes that first lien lender's position. So we would try to get that, but I doubt we'd be able to. So you're right, that if they go borrow a bunch of money and the building's half built, although if the building's only half built, the lender's probably gonna have to finish it in some fashion. But that would change our options, and if the lender takes it, that may wipe out our second mortgage that would secure the balance of the payment, and it probably makes meaningless the right to buy it back, because that would be throwing good money after bad.
So I think that's the extent of my questions at this point. My comment would be, I think we can see that we're not, it feels like we're definitely not in a position to go forward. It's always interesting in the public realm that we have to sit here and negotiate with ourselves because it's
Yes.
because it's a public meeting. So not the strongest position to be in, but it is what it is. We are where we are, but I don't believe we can go forward with anything. Number one, because we got to bring council along, as the mayor says, and number two, folks can see from the complexity here that we've got to further refine this and give it more thought, not only in terms of whether this is the right party. We need to know what their project is, and we need to hammer out counter proposals from our side. Need to further develop those while we negotiate with ourselves. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Tim. Any additional questions of staff or questions of our council or comments? Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, I was just going to ask about next steps as far as, next week agenda for the full DDA board. Did we want to continue this discussion? Is the DDA interested in continuing to provide feedback that we can incorporate and further discuss next week? And then, of course, the possibility of extending an MOU as we work through this.
I think for me, it would be really helpful to have a better understanding of what we're talking about in the form of a project, and whether or not the developer themselves still think it's a viable opportunity, and if the DDA, and I say if, elects to extend the time period by which they would have an exclusive.
Peter, I can barely hear you.
I'm sorry, George.
That's better. That's better when you lead up. Could you start over just because I missed what you were saying?
Yeah, but my comments at this point are, I'd like to have a better understanding whether or not the developer still feels this is a viable opportunity for them. If the DDA elects to extend the exclusivity, what the net result of that is going to be, and how long the exclusivity would be extended. If it were extended, as Jim suggests, for a brief period of time for us to ask questions of ourselves about what we wish to pursue, what we need to do with regard to shoring up the PSA agreement, how our debt is going to be addressed with regard to the DDA's issues. I think that there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and we can really do that as long as we have the developer participating in the conversation. So that's kind of my thoughts initially.
And then I have another question, or I need to confirm something. Is it the case that is there a possibility that we can have a broader discussion with it in a non-open meeting? So this is an Open Meetings Act question. I think folks can sense the disadvantage of negotiating and this in a meeting with open as we hash through things. So Could I have, if somebody's in a position to answer that, I would appreciate it.
I thought for
This
sale.
is Steve. This is Steve Palms again. I know that the Open Meetings Act does have a provisions in it that a discussion of the sale of real estate may be a topic that you can have a closed meeting on. I would need to get the details from one of my colleagues, but I do know that there are provisions in the Open Meetings Act that permit closed discussions on certain topics, and I believe, and Reshma, you may know more about this than I do, but there may be some as I say, qualifications there that would enable us to have a private meeting with respect to the sale of this property.
I think it's actually on the purchase of property, not the sale. And we've had this issue come up, but we certainly can ask our city attorney because that's just we have to just obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have it reversed or not. I thought on the purchase you can, on the sale you can't, but we certainly can ask that question.
And again, the spirit of this question is not, I repeat, not to not be transparent and to not bring the public along with us. It's to be able to answer some of these questions and have frank discussions, and then appropriately let the public know what transpired and give them the opportunity for input. So this is not trying to take it out of the public realm. It's an attempt to put our best foot forward on behalf of the public.
Thank you, Jim. Any additional comments? So Adam, did we respond to your questions?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe we will have a much healthier conversation at our next meeting, and then the DDA can elect to either extend the agreement that we have presently, or really make a decision at that point what we plan on doing, what our intention is. But we do need to have the developer participating. We need to have some of these items and questions answered, I think, before the full DDA can render a decision. So I appreciate everyone's comments, and thank you, Steve, for your participation. See if there's no other questions or comments about this item, let's move on to our next agenda item, which is 270 West Grand River. And Adam, are you going to provide?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We actually have David Haywood and Jake Parcell on the line to discuss the 270 West Grand.
And this is Steve. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you for including us in the meeting. Hopefully the discussion was helpful, but we'll sign off because it sounds like this next topic isn't something that we can provide much help on. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Bye.
And Reshma, thank you.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Our lead person on this project was Jake Parcell, so Jake will be giving the presentation today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's Jake Parcell from Planning Department. So in front of you today is an application for 270 West Grand River Boulevard. Formerly was the Big B Coffee on Grand River. The application is a site plan review to demolish the existing building and use it as a surface parking lot for the purpose of visitors to the Big B and the new fitness center at 300 West Grand River, and also residents. Essentially, the application is to remove the building and then add some landscaping and some parking spaces where they are, where the building currently is, for a total of, I believe, 39 parking spaces on site. There were some comments at the first Planning Commission meeting where this was heard that DTN is reviewing and getting back to us. This includes adding either curbing or wheel stops around the interior, adding landscaping islands to the current landscaping plan that was included in your packet, and adding pedestrian linkages in and out of the parking lot so that you don't have to walk all the way around and out. But essentially, it's a gated parking lot for use of 300 West Grand River, which is allowed as an approved site plan, or allowed as a use with an approved site plan in the B2 zoning district if it's within 200 uses of the building, or 200 feet of the use that it serves, which in this case, it's about 45 feet away. So I am open for questions. This, as of now, should be at Planning Commission next Wednesday. We're waiting on edits from DTN, and we'll incorporate any comments that you have for Planning Commission review as well.
What is the timetable, Jake?
The timetable for the project, so the public hearing has been held. Next week will be the review, or the should be, if we stick to schedule, the Planning Commission's recommendation to council, and then it will be put on the council agenda from there. So about another month or so.
So the demo will occur in March?
David might be able to reference. I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble hearing you, but I think it would be in March with council, yeah. Beginning of March, most likely.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Jake? Go ahead, Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Hey, Jim, it looks like you're muted.
You're muted, Jim.
Sorry, gang, I'm going back and forth between the site plan there, and I've got to have this screen open to talk. Do we know if from the developer, DTN, if this is considered a permanent sort of a project, as much as anything can be permanent parking lot, or is this more of a temporary concept? And then my other concept is, it sounds like we approved a project earlier on, or the city did, and there was insufficient parking.
So the first comment I'd like to address, I think you phrased it well, as permanent as it can be. The intention is that they said they may have future use for the land on site, a project yet to be realized, but for any use that we're reviewing, I kind of like to just keep the ball in front of us and review this as this would be the use that'll retain on the parcel for the time being. So I would say to review it that way. And then if anything else comes up, obviously this board will be, in the project discussion phase. And then secondly, the parking on site for the 300 West Grand initially had the parking agreement worked out in 2015 when it was developed, but as the uses inside of the building have changed a little bit, Big B going in there, and then the fitness center, the parking calculation has updated a little bit. And I think that more than anything, this is just to really kind of help visitors of the Big B and any other potential use on the ground floor be able to park there with a pass or however DTN works it out, and then to go over and visit for extended periods of time. So I think it's more of an accessory parking for that structure, which is kind of where it's situated at in the zoning code by definition.
And I guess I didn't mean the comment to sound so pointed, but DTN likely has properties around there where that could benefit from this sort of parking from their perspective. And I understand we need to view this as, I was just asking, if we knew from their perspective whether this was temporary or not, and you've answered that.
Yeah. No, so the fitness center is for use of other DTN properties or anyone who purchases like a pass. I believe they have it, kind of like a membership agreement for the fitness center. So this would help that, which would in turn facilitate other apartments and other businesses that buy passes for the fitness center. But the fitness center is still under construction, so we haven't experienced what the parking would be like yet there.
Okay. Any additional questions for Jake? We'll take this up at our full DDA meeting next week.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments or questions of staff members?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. No other business before the committee, so I will offer a motion to adjourn and ask for a second.
Second.
It's been seconded by the mayor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, guys.